that makes sense.
No,
Whereas when it's a bit annoying, I suppose.
But we had so my laptop was broken in what episode was that? Leafius's one, innit? And couple other ones. But basically my laptop started making like a sound. So I was recording on a laptop before. So it started making like a noise thing. So we just realized that in one of the episodes, like you can actually hear it. Like
but
it's
I'm sure
super quiet. It's super quiet, but you can hear it. Like so depending on the you know what? The audio experience also depends on the headset or like the speaker you listen on and stuff. Because the better the headset or the better the speaker will give you more.
The clearer.
Exactly.
This is good. Wow, it's weird listening to myself. This is the first time. It's a bit all.
Yeah, it's an experience. It's an experience.
Oh my God, okay.
Cool. Yeah, so it's been a long time.
It has.
I haven't seen you for a while.
It has. I think, so we first met when I was 15, 16, I think.
Yeah.
So that's quite a few years now, about 6 or so. I don't know, I'm not good at maths, but anyway. It's been a long time. I think I went through a lot. I've developed a lot. I'm growing a lot. Life's a roller coaster, isn't it? So you go up and down. But it's a pleasure to see you.
That's a pleasure to see you
with
too.
That.
Yeah. We're gonna catch up through a podcast.
Oh, it's so good. Nice. Like this is so exciting. I said, I've never done this before. So, well, I suppose not professionally anyway. Yeah. But I know we've always had nice conversations, so I'm sure it'll be exciting.
Yeah. So what have you been up to recently?
Well, I don't know where to start. So I've got a new job, which I always dreamed about. So that's really exciting. And I think it really puts me in a position where I can now sort of relax and enjoy life. It's just such a nice feeling to get to where, you know, you kind of work hard and you know that you want to get there. And then you get there and it's like, oh, wow, it actually happened. So I got a new job. I work at the NHS, so that's really exciting. I'm a health and wellbeing coach. Those roles never existed before, and it kind of it almost feels as if I was born at the right time, if it makes sense, because if you think 10 years back, those positions would never exist. So it just sort of all, you know, when you trust the universe, it kind of all falls into place, and I'm like, wow, this is so cool, and I can't imagine it being like this, even if it was a few years before, and I have no idea what it would be like a few years after, because it's just at the very beginning. So it's nice to be at that beginning of the journey. And then beginning for NHS as well, as they're trying to rebuild and they're putting all these new roles in to sort of support patients and individuals. So it's really nice and exciting. I think that's the biggest up right now.
It sounds like you're pioneering something. So what's a health and wellbeing coach? Is that like life coaching but towards like health and wellbeing?
Yeah. So ideally, I work with I don't know. I'm not going to go into like terminology, but I work with, let's say, 9 medical practices, so GPs, and then the GPs have patients which have, let's say, ongoing chronic pain or chronic illnesses, or there's weight issues, or there's a lot of stress and anxiety. So any patient that the doctor feels like they could benefit from self-management tools, then I get to work on them. So it is exactly like that. It's like life coaching, but you apply it on health and well-being primarily. But don't get me wrong, you do get the areas of life which aren't really health and well-being, because as individuals, as a holistic individual, there's many areas of your life that you need to look at to then feel quite, I suppose, a whole. It's
so they're kind of like they're all connected in one way or another.
Yeah, so you can't just say, focus on your veggies when there's a lot of
there's something crazy is going on.
Exactly, you can't just, it isn't just one thing. I suppose it's just finding out, what do we focus on first? What's the priority? Because a person can be really, let's say they're finding it hard to accept the illness that they got diagnosed with. And you can't tell them to go and drink 2 liters of water, because that fear in you, when you get that diagnosis, you can't focus on water in your food. You need to then try and accept that. And so we work on these tools to sort of work on the primary issue, or let's say challenge that we have at the moment.
Sort of like the cause.
And then we slowly then go off and look at other bits that we can sort of tune into. But yeah, it's really cool. It's really exciting.
No, I love that, because like I think traditionally, like there's always like, if someone went to a GP and they had some sort of issue, there's always been like, take these pills or take that, and actually there's a different cause. Like there's a, you can't just tell someone to take some pills when something else is going on in their life.
Exactly. And we can't. So I think the healthcare system, I'm not I don't know a lot of history about it, but there's always, and I always say this, we look at the symptom, but we forget the cause. And obviously you can't apply this to illnesses that are chronic or immune system related, but you just can't, because you do need those medications to sort of support you. But then there are other things where, are the antidepressants really the first thing to go to? Can we then introduce these roles which now have been introduced and look at the, and teach the person to self-manage themselves when it comes to a bit of a low. And if that doesn't help, then maybe the second option is then to, of course, go for the medication. Because what can you do when, if there isn't a chemical in your brain? It's hard to then look at that, It's hard to then implement a little step at a time. But let's try with that, see if anything does change, and then we can go to the medication. So, I guess before it used to be exactly that. So you come to me with a problem, my goal is to give you a tablet.
Your goal is to get rid of me as soon as possible.
Yeah, and it's beautiful to see now that the NHS is implementing these roles, because they're exactly what we're talking about. Let's try and build the confidence, the skills, the knowledge about self-awareness, about health and well-being, about coping with daily stress, because everyone has that. And then let's see if anything helps, if that helps, and then we can then adjust maybe the medication.
So it's sort of like looking at the foundation of the person. Like, how can we make the person's foundation better so all of the other things can get, sorted as well.
And that's so beautiful, I think.
That
and
is, yeah.
We have been perhaps lacking that. But like I said, it's so nice to now be in a position where we have these services and, I can work with a patient, I can work with groups, let's say, and we all work together to support one another, to build those skills and to build that foundation, like you say. It's only the beginning, but I see it going very sort of far, and I'm intrigued to see where we will go. And I don't know what the statistics will show later on, but at the beginning, like I said, it's really exciting to be at the very beginning of this, because you get to observe and sort of see what will it make a difference in 10
you get to create a path
time.
for other people as well.
Yeah,
it's incredible. Do you know what, I was having a conversation with someone about maybe like a month or 2 months ago, and I was having a conversation with them talking about the exact same thing we're talking about, saying how people go to GP and they get prescribed medication and basically get rid of as soon as possible, and that's what we need. What you're doing with health and well-being coaching, that's exactly what we need.
Yeah, and it's working in partnership, because like I say, there can be, we can look at the person, and if we look at the person as a whole person, there's the skeletal system, the muscles, and we've got the brain, and we've got the mental health, we've got the emotions. There's so many things, and there are some things in which I will not be able to help. Like, I can't change your the way that your immune system reacts
sort
to your
of like
body.
a physical build, like your physical build. You can't really just change that.
I can't, but let's see if we can your immune system reacts. Let's say, I'll use me as an example. So I've been diagnosed with AS recently. So my immune system starts shooting off pain everywhere. So it gets inflamed, then every single joint hurts, and you feel helpless. You're like, what can I do? So I can't change that, and I'll do everything that the doctor tells me to sort of do to help my, let's say, my the response of my immune system. But then my role as an individual is to then, how do I deal with the pain? What remedies to put in?
The management.
How do I become self-aware and then know when to stop when it's a bit too much? How do I, I used to be able to do 10 things in a day. Oh, now I need to do 3. So keep an eye on that. So little things like that, but they make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because if I can do 3 tasks in a day, and then still have a night sleep and not be in pain everywhere, I'm winning. Like, that's
of course.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
But that takes a lot of self-awareness and self-management. And I'm lucky that I've been quite self-aware since I was young.
It's so funny because I was going to ask you that question, yeah. So speaking of self-awareness, so obviously I've seen you write a lot of stuff on Instagram, a lot of reflective stuff. And I was going to ask you, where does your skill to reflect come from? And
it's a good question. I never actually thought about it. I just know I've always been. But if I think back, I always used to write. So I was never, when I was young, me and Mum had a rocky sort of relation. I was very naughty as a teen. My mum had to put up with a lot, and we used to get into these massive arguments, but none of us were right. I was really bad. But I always found it hard to speak, so to tell her how I feel. So I would just write it down. and I'd write all my feelings, sort of, I'm angry and I'm this and I'm that, and I'd have like this huge diary with just how I'm feeling. And I think that engraved in me since, if you imagine, I started writing all my emotions since I was 10, and it stays with you.
Yeah.
And then I started getting, I suppose when I started college, I would just, right, so a good example is I came from Lithuania, and I came here as 10 years old, and you go through an identity crisis. I did. I don't know if others do. There's one culture and then there's another. So there's Lithuania, I grew up there, but now there's England and I'm growing up here. And it's like, so who am I? It gets quite difficult at times. So I know that my roots are in Lithuania and I've got all these values, but now I'm here and this is different.
And there's a lot of different cultures here. There's not just like one culture to adapt to. There's like people from different cultures they have to learn and get to know.
You get all this knowledge and you're exposed to all this information, and it's not bad in any way, but it makes you question yourself, and it almost lets you create your own self. So I think when I was going through that identity sort of, I call it crisis, but it was just questioning who I really am. I really spent a lot of time just asking myself these difficult questions. So what are my values? Okay, I know I grew up in Lithuania and I value family, and, you know, you engrave those values, they sort of stay with you. But now I'm here and I value independence and I value knowledge and I value education. And so how can we integrate the two? So I think when I was asking myself all these different questions, that's the self-awareness in itself. So it always sort of stayed with me. And I'd always, whenever I'm in a pickle or I'm going through something, my first go-to is to then go and reflect on it, because it almost lets you take you away from you. So I'm sitting here, I'm really emotional, I'm angry, or, you know, I'm concerned, I don't know what to do. Let's take a piece of paper, step aside, let's write everything out and brainstorm, and then sort of, while you see everything on here, let's make a plan.
It's kind of like gives you clarity, and there's and I feel like you built a platform, which is your platform is writing down. You know, some people make music, some people do other stuff, some people train. There's like loads of different platforms to kind of process that.
Yeah, and it's just that expression, isn't it? Like you say, it doesn't matter how you express it. If it helps you deal with it, if it helps you to be at ease, be at calm. And I think everyone has a go-to, and everyone should. It's such an important thing to have, whether that's self-awareness and writing. I'm a lot of planning. So when I'm anxious, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. I plan.
You need to know. You need to know.
Oh my God. I'm like, right, I know I'm bad, so I'm going to do this day. I'm going to try this day. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to try something else. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to try something else.
But do you end up trying all of that? Do you actually do it? Like,
yeah, I do. And I think like not in every area of my life, but I think health is really huge. So
health is wealth.
Exactly. And whenever I do feel I'm a bit, you know, down, or I don't feel as good, that's my go-to. So that area always, you know, this doesn't work. Am I not sleeping right? Am I doing too much? What am I, you know? And I suppose when you have a chronic illness or a diagnosis, it will always change. You know, you'll never have the same month, because you don't know. You might have a huge flare up for a month, and then the next month you're good, or it might change 2 weeks bad and then a month good. So it's always ongoing.
But there's also about something that you might be, not you necessarily, but there's something about a person might be doing something all the time, constantly, but they don't know what impact it has on them until they stop doing it. So sometimes people talk about making life changes with like incorporating certain new things into their life, but no one talks about, what about if you stop doing something that you do on a regular basis and see what that does for you? And
that also lets you, I think change is always good. So if doing something that you're not very comfortable with, so like you say, let's say for me, a routine, I really like routine. Like I need it to stay sane. Like I need a routine. But then stopping that really enabled me to look that, hey, maybe I can be a bit chilled, maybe a routine in the morning or routine for work, but the rest just sort of see how it goes. So like you say, it's important to then not have it, to understand, you know, is it the best thing for you? Can it be a bit different? Can you adjust to it? Can you be a bit more flexible? So yeah, I'm absolutely with you on that one.
Yeah.
To maybe try and stop doing something and then see how you act. But then again, that's self-awareness. It comes down to you need to realize that you're doing something first to then stop it. Yeah.
I don't know, like sometimes there's something about going on holiday that does that automatically, because like if you go on holiday, that's going to automatically take you out your regular routine, and it's kind of like it's a it'll disrupt your it's a thought disruptor, because then you're going to start doing different things on holiday, you start thinking differently, and that's why most of the time when people go on holiday, they recharge and they come back, and that kind of mode lasts for maybe like, let's say like a week or two, until they start going back to their normal routine. And I think that usually that gap of like that 1 or 2 weeks of having that fresh mindset, I think that's the key of like, this is when you need to start making changes with your past routine, but most people don't. But
I agree with you. It's funny you say that. Yeah, because obviously because of all this lockdown, we haven't really been able to do many things. Well, I cycled or whatever, but it hasn't been as open. We couldn't go anywhere. And I think I only realized that it didn't really affect me. I was like, I'll just buckle up and I'll just carry on.
Kind of go through it. Yeah, just ride a wave.
There's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing I can do. I'm not in power. I'm not going to end the lockdown. Whatever. I'll go with it. But recently, I went on a few getaways, and so coming back from them, like you say, you almost feel, wow, like my focus is so much better. I've got ideas, and that kind of was a bit shut down. But I haven't realized it until I've done it, because I thought, let me just, I'll just go with the flow. I'll just do it. But then when I came back from a few getaways, I sat down, I was like, it does have a huge impact. It really does. Yeah. I agree with the fact that
it's called a getaway for a reason.
It is.
That's just funny. It's called a getaway. Get away from everything.
It is. And I suppose, when you can't, so when I couldn't get away, I guess I just create a little sort of, not a distraction, I wouldn't call it a distraction, but a little something to get me away from that daily life and that daily routine, because you need that. And I think we all need that to just, like you say, to maybe calm down, to do things differently, to let your brain rest, to not think about the things that you think on a daily basis. But yeah, it does have an impact. And I used to love traveling. I used to go away every month, and
you traveled quite a bit actually.
Yeah, it was beautiful, like great. So like I never actually thought about it, that it does have quite a bit of an impact on me, because I guess now that I've been able to go away a few times, I do feel quite a bit more recharged and stuff. But you don't realize until you do it. Yeah.
So far in your lifetime, if you was to say, the 3 most important things you've learned so far, I guess it's kind of like it's not a super difficult question, but 3 most important things you've learned so far, what would it be?
Oh my God, I think self-awareness has to be number 1. Well, I wouldn't really, I'm not going to say like first, second, third.
Okay, you know what?
Just 3 important.
So obviously you write for self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
How would you what kind of advice would you give to someone who doesn't necessarily do a lot of reflection? What would you say for them to try to kind of incorporate that in their life?
Well, if they haven't tried it yet, and self-reflection, let's say by writing, maybe try it first of all and see if you do like it. And it's just, even if you if you don't know which questions to ask yourself, go on Google and search, so just to get you started. Yeah. Because I'm fine to sit down and say, what's worrying me the most, and then I'll make a list. But someone might not be able to even think of that question, because it just doesn't come naturally. Yeah. So start to go on Google and see, self-awareness questions, top 10, I don't know, and then try and pick the ones that are most relevant to you right now. Yeah. If you're not, if you don't like writing, and that's just not your thing, painting, art is great. I mean, like, you can express yourself in so many ways through art, and you don't have to be a good painter. Like, I can't draw a stick man properly, but when I feel like I just, I'm a bit down or whatever, and I can grab a pencil, I can grab some paint and just do whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be anything.
It's almost like you're getting the energy out.
Yeah, just put it out there. I don't know, try different things, dancing, boxing, anything that just makes you let it out. But I think it's very important to know what you're letting out. Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it uncertainty? Is it excitement? Because it can be good things too. It doesn't have to be always, you don't have to be. So I often when I'm really like, oh my God, how did I get here? And then I'll make a little, yeah. And I'm like, oh, this is great. And I'll still write it down, because then you come back to it and you read it and you're like, oh, I was in such a good place here. What was I doing here? And if I'm in a worse place now, how can I get to the place that I was there when I was very excited and everything was, blossoming. But I think, again, even to realize what you want how to become self-aware, spend that time asking yourself, what do I enjoy? What did I enjoy when I was young? Because we had no rules or regulations then.
Yeah.
What was you like then? Did you dance? Did you paint? Did you build? What did you do? And then I think we almost get disconnected from that child often. Get back to it, man.
Yeah.
That's your pureness. That's like your most pure self.
I love that.
Like you would... and then we start growing and we get to society and rules and, it has to be like this and right and wrong and ego and it and this and that. And almost, we almost, cover that child up a bit. But there's no reason to not go back to it once in a while. Yeah. And just to let loose, whatever 100%. That means to you.
Yeah. Cool. So that's the first one. So the first one is...
Self-awareness. Second one... Well, I guess it kind of goes to self-awareness, but this is more specific. Really build your own morals, values, and beliefs. So I guess we speak about the broad self-awareness, but this comes more like to your deeper self.
This is kind of, I would say, like this is more like just individual and purpose connected. Just what is a purpose and who are you as a person and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and don't I think... If you're good without it, if you don't have any issues with, let's say, choosing, making decisions, and feeling proud of them, making decisions and knowing them they're the right thing for you, then I guess you're quite okay. Then that sort of shows you that your base is strong. But if you come to a situation where you're like, I don't know what to decide, I don't know what to pick, I don't know where to go, like I just absolutely, that's when I think it's the most important to then go back to your core values, beliefs, and morals. Because they should sort of almost guide you to make those decisions. And if we're not self-aware, we're not confident in them, if we don't like brew them enough, it can cause a lot of uncertainty often. I think it's really important. I'm so sort of frustrated that we don't get this taught in school. I think it should be a whole like subject, self-awareness and knowing yourself.
Schools are messed up anyways, but...
There we go. About that. I was always passionate about schools, and I know that they teach us the bases, to then get out, but what about the basis of our mind?
I don't understand the issue with school. So what I mean by that is like I don't understand if the issue is like the issue that it's not changing is if it's because that's the way they want it to be set up, or if it's because like the people that are running it are just like so like old school minded and they're not open minded and like to different change on this. I'm not too sure what the issue is, but clearly there's a problem with education anyways in general. And
it's basically like the whole thing of like schools forgot why they do what they do. And I said this on the other pod probably a year ago. The initial reason why we learn English is to learn to articulate ourselves properly and communicate what we need to communicate. So why are we learning about Shakespeare? The reason why we learn maths is to like taxes and learn how to buy and sell things. But why am I learning Pythagoras' theorem? Like the initial reason why we do what we do, that's forgotten. And they're just doing more things like what makes money, what makes popularity. And it's just like a lot of businesses do this as well, like especially the ones that I've worked with. The initial reason why they do what they do just flies away the bigger they grow. And I guess it's like this is kind of one of the things about like even this podcast and anything that I work on is like I always try to remember why I started. Otherwise it would just turn to shit and my morals would just go out the window.
Exactly. But it's also like that's a great point, and it kind of reflects the fact that look, economically we're here, and with schools we kind of stayed back. So why are we not adjusting to the society, the culture and the economics, and not teaching kids the skills that they will actually need? So I know some kids that sort of graduating from college and don't know how to use Excel and stuff. How are we going to land a job in the 21st century?
But you know what's beautiful? Like anyone can self-learn almost anything now. That's because we got to the point where like we have the actual experts who can go on YouTube, make a video about it. You can go on Google, make an article and write things up, but
it's almost not fair for the kids. So why?
I know, but that's what I'm saying. So that's the craziest thing, because a 16-year-old can learn the same stuff that someone in university is learning right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So and I think the beauty is that actually I think eventually like the world is going to be forced to kind of catch up with that. because I think obviously that's the change that's coming in now, and there's a lot there's a lot of like corporations that kind of like they don't hire people with a uni degree and stuff, and they're starting to look at the person's intelligence and the talent, because like if you think about it academically anyways, like most of the time it's all about like memory test anyways. It's like cool to prepare for an exam, it's like how good is your memory, but it doesn't really test like how intelligent you are. It's just how good is your memory.
What about creativity?
Exactly. So someone with kind of like the shit memory, they might be super creative and they might just be like super sick at doing something and super intelligent, but just because the memory is bad, they might fail the exam, and
that was me.
Yeah, and there you go. But clearly that's the wrong, the way it's built at the moment is clearly not the right, it doesn't really measure it in the right way.
So I don't know the basis of this, but I'm sure there's like educational psychologists which would be able to tell us otherwise. But I think it's something along the lines of building the base in the brain for that brain to then go off and, learn or to be then creative. But I almost feel as if we can sort of build that base a bit earlier.
Yeah.
I feel like we're dragging it out a little bit.
It's like almost like we like we talk to kids like the kids, like, hey, would you like to, like, that sort of thing. It's like
I feel like kids they're actually capable of learning this
from
quicker.
a much younger age. Yeah.
So I don't know, like let's say uni. I went to uni and I did a great course. I loved it. It was amazing, but not many courses are like mine. My course let me express my opinion. It let me analyze it. It let me question things. But many courses aren't like that. They're this is A, this is B equals C. So there isn't much creativity. But again, uni, bachelors, let's say with bachelors, unless you're going into a career, doctors, lawyers, where you need a bachelor's to then go off, because otherwise
it's kind of like just to certify that you've really been through that training and you really like know your stuff.
Yeah, and it's almost to say you're organized, because a bachelor's, all it does is it teaches you how to juggle a few assignments at the same time. So like then what it tells to a workplace is that you can plan.
You're capable of doing that.
You can organize. You can produce a project.
Or you're just really good at going to a forum saying, "Can someone write my assignments for me?"
Exactly. So how is this reflective enough? Again, and I'm glad that there are organizations now that look. They don't look just at a degree, because I know recently I wouldn't have got a job if I pressed no on the application where it said if you have a degree. I would have been just cut off. That's it. You don't pass that. So, but this still is happening. It still is. So then how do we change that? Where do we start with it? Apprenticeships, I guess they started.
I think, do you know what? I think it's already started. I think the way it's going to change is like through conversation, and it's going to take a little bit of time. And it's the same conversation we're having. Eventually, other people are going to start having the same conversation. And then one day someone a little bit more braver, someone a little bit more like, who's a bit more action oriented, they're going to go, someone that's in that position to make some of those changes, they're going to go, you know what, from tomorrow we're going to start this new program. People won't need a degree to come and work here, whatever. And I think over time it's going to happen. But I think like anything else, like with these sort of changes, I think this is like something that's going to take a little bit of time. Because sometimes obviously like we might be awake and we might be aware of certain things, but those changes are like kind of like they take a much longer to kind of like come in place and stuff. But I think it will happen. I think it will change.
I hope so. And I guess because I guess if we think about this 50 years ago, 60, no one would actually speak about this. Like they wouldn't speak about self-awareness and the importance of intelligence or creativity instead of a paper saying that you've attended lectures and you wrote that essay in the end.
Are you still doing your blog, by the way?
No.
You stopped it. But so something like your blog is a much better like kind of like comparison to a degree. Like your blog is much more powerful and much better because you're technically just highlighting who you are as a person.
And I think that's where personal branding comes in, and it's really high right now in the business world. So your business or your brand, you are your brand.
So everyone's technically a walking brand anyways. And
that's where it's heading to. So if you're in college, if you're in uni, think about yourself as how can I express my strengths and what are my strengths and my values? What do I want to get into, Is it creativity? Is it logical? Is it sort of going with rules and regulations? Because some people they like rules, regulations, you apply it, and that's great. But And how then can you express and show it in the real world? Do a little project somewhere.
It's almost how can you build on it a bit further?
Yeah, so instead of a CV, like you say, building a blog or building a website or showing someone that you are, because the competition is there. I mean,
so
it's really hard to get a job now with just a normal CV or whatnot.
So in a weird example, I'm going to put it like this, yeah. So let's say, let's take Skepta as a musician, for example, right? Like, let's say his music has become his CV. And then when he's done stuff with Nike, so then like an organization, let's say something like Nike or whatever, they're not much different from a person who's kind of branding themselves anyway. So when he's done like Nike x Skepta, so there's like two brands coming together, or like he's made himself a brand, and he's basically like his music was like kind of his CV to build that anyways.
Exactly. And then the people that, you know, obviously if we put it in the business terms, the people that look up to him will most likely look up to the brand then, because they're interconnecting, you know, that showcases him. And if you look up to that person, you'll then go off and you could, because you believe in him, and you know it has you have a connection with them, so you believe that because they chose this deal or whatnot, you know, it's right for them, which means okay, cool, then I can go into it, and I believe that, and because I have that sort of connection. So yeah, I mean, yeah, school, uni, everything is just
it's crazy.
It is, but it's a nice journey, and like you say, it's nice to be now in this position where we can have these conversations, and we can be like, oh, what can I do differently, or how can I stand out, or how can I get to know myself a bit better, so then I can express myself.
Those are all like life coaching questions as well, which I love.
Yeah,
and also going back to the self-awareness a little bit, like it's you know, if someone's like listening to this anyway, so just another way of becoming self-aware, get a life coach.
Exactly.
Get a life coach. Yeah,
absolutely.
If you can't do all those other things we mentioned, like writing and, you know, whatever, training, whatever it is for you, then get a life coach.
And there's so many opportunities nowadays. Like, there's so many experts in little fields, and they're very specific fields. So let's say a life coach for when, you know, you're just uncertain, you don't know where to go, you don't know how to make a plan, you're not very, you know, you just don't know where to start, and there's so many things that are happening at the same time. That person is there to then guide you, to help you make that plan, or to ask you the question so you can then make that plan.
And there's life coaches for everything. Like, I've seen, what's the latest one I've seen? There was like a spiritual life coach for someone to connect with spirituality, and there's so many different fields. There's relationship life coaches, and there's just almost everything you can think of.
And how nice is it that we're now we're at this stage now, at this center or whatever century, that you can go out and find someone to guide you, or because they've done it before, they have that experience, and they can then transfer their strengths and what they've learned and give it to you, and you don't have to do it. Like, I mean, you can just get that guidance from them and then be in a much better place. And let's say if you don't know where to start with your business, there's a business coach. Get a plan together, set your goals, you know, 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, 4, and you start and go there, because we're not taught all this. We can't physically learn everything literally instantly. You just can't. So there are times in your life, it's a journey, and there are times in your life when you might need someone to guide you a bit. And I'm all for that, because it can get quite lonely and quite frustrated if you're always in a position where when you're always in a position where, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty, let's say, or you don't know how to put into action, or you just don't have the skills to express yourself in a way that would then lead to a plan later on. Because we're not all taught this, we're not all self-taught, and if we're not taught in schools again, then and our parents have to work 9 to 8 or whatever and just see us because they're working hard and they can't spend that time with us teaching us because of life commitments. And then you're in this position where, you know, you've grown up now and that's missing. Go and do it, man. There's still time. Go and learn. Go and get someone and sort of get to know yourself and have a little plan, or whatever makes you. Some people don't need a plan; they hate a plan. You know, everyone's
whatever makes you
different.
happy.
Whatever makes you happy.
I say the same thing. Just do what makes you happy all the time,
and be confident about it. So important. Be proud of the fact that you don't need a plan, and someone else tells you that you do. You don't. Like, if you don't, you don't. Be proud of the fact that you do need a plan or to be organized, because that's just who generally you are. And that goes back to values, beliefs, and morals. I know who I am. Like, no one can tell me otherwise. I'm in my own little lane. There's no competition. I'm rooting for everyone. I'm happy for everyone. But I'm generally pleased with what I am and who I am. And I'll learn from myself as life goes. And I'm happy to do that, or change and shift and develop.
But usually it's like, even like things like uncertainty or like just being lost, like they're not actually bad things. They're actually indicators. They're an opportunity to find yourself. And what's that saying? You can't find yourself if you don't get lost, or something like that.
Or you don't know what happiness feels like unless you get sad.
Yeah, so it's like, it's all of these things, they're not actually bad things. They're just indicators. Like, they're just indicating like, hey, like, look, you're sad. Like, obviously there's something going on. So that's an indicator to kind of explore that a little bit more. You know, if someone's uncertain, then that's an indicator to kind of explore.
So yeah, I think that's why I kind of love the journey so much. Like, most upon a time, and both of you would know this, like when I feel shit, and that's all I focus on, just the fact that this feeling of shit is shit. And over time, I've learned that there's value in that. So my kind of way of living life now, and anyone who's listening to this, feel free to take advice from it. So have you ever heard of like this thing called it will pass? So no matter what it is, good or bad, it will pass. If you're having the best time of your life, it will pass. If you're having the worst time of your life, it will pass. Everything will pass eventually. So it's kind of up to you to decide what you take from it. So let's say if I'm happy right now, I'm having the time of my life, I understand that eventually it will go away and I'll be back to, I'll be in another state of mind, whether it be worse or whatever. So what I can do in this moment in time, take all the value from it, enjoy it, make it like as valuable as possible, and like learn as much as I can from it. And then when it does pass, and I might end up feeling shit for a bit or whatever, understand that this is only temporary, and there's a lot of learning to get from this as well. If anything, there's more learning and value to get from when you're sad than there is from when you're happy. Because when you're happy, your vision's almost kind of blinded or clouded. When you're sad, it's like everything's in front of you, and it's almost like you got that feeling of overwhelming kind of thing. But if you just kind of fixate your mind on what to focus on and the valuable things you can gain from it, you would forever make progress. And that's why I had this like feeling recently, and I loved it. I honestly feel like I'm constantly making progress. There's non-stop going upwards, and I'm on an upwards. What do you call it? Like I'm just going up in it. Like I'm slowly going up in a diagonal motion. And if I ever go down, it's like a little spike and then straight back up. It's like a little down. And I'm saying, so I never feel like, especially as of recent, I never feel like I'm not making progress. And that's all for me, understanding who I am and what I do and why I do it, and understand the value in each thing I do and each thing that happens to me. Yeah, I guess, yeah.
And to follow from that, so this is like a little trick or like something you can practice. So when you do feel sad, it tells you about you. So use that, or when you are happy, it tells you about you. So for example, something's happening, you're overwhelmed and uncertain, or you're angry at someone, or someone's pissed you off because they said something. Try and, if you can get that piece of paper, do it. If you can't, mentally sit down and get away from, what does that tell you about you? Do you believe that if someone says this word, your worth is lower? What are the core beliefs behind your feelings? If you are pissed off, why? Does the culture told you to be pissed off because someone does that? Did that interfere with your worth? If so, can you make a decision to then make sure that it doesn't happen? Do you need to then tell that person to set a boundary? Do you need to ask that person to be kinder next time? What are your core beliefs behind those feelings? So when I'm sad, or I don't know, I was looking for a job, I couldn't get a job, and I felt like, and I've always been career driven, and I've always been like, I want to love my job and I want to enjoy it because that brings me joy. I do every day, and I want to make sure that I like it, basically, and that's not wrong. So when I got furloughed because of lockdown and everything happened, I was really sad. What are my beliefs behind this? What, because I'm not employed, I'm less worthy? Like, how am I linking this? I know I'm career driven, but wake up, Dems, seriously. Like, this is a global pandemic's happening. You've been furloughed because the universe doesn't have the funds to cover you and your job can't happen. How does that, why are you sad about it? Why can't we change, let's be excited. Let's change that sadness.
It's almost like you was changing your measurement of what, how you measure happiness. Like, that's not, you realize that that's not how you should measure it. That's not, that doesn't.
Or if I start getting pissed off about someone, like, I don't know, if someone's in a relationship, you'd probably, little things that someone does, like, oh man, but
Yeah,
why?
yeah.
And then I would, if I see myself doing it and it becomes a pattern, I'm like, I take the time out to sit down. I'm like, but why does it bother me? Why have I been taught that has to be something that pisses me off?
It's what it said. It's what it said. It's super powerful. That's more about you than what that thing is. It's more about how you deal with that.
Yeah, because put a mirror in front of you. When something is annoying you or you're getting angry about something, why? Have you been taught, have I been taught by, I don't know, my parents or my grandparents to make sure that the house is clean, and if it isn't, you're worthless or whatever? And then I get angry about someone that doesn't put his sock away, and I'm like, stupid, this is silly, like, why? I love the person, the sock is fine, it doesn't harm anyone, just stay there for a few days, put a boundary in, let's put it away in 3 days, cool, done, sorted, dusted. But what does it tell you? What does that emotion tell you about you? It's such an important question to ask. Don't be like, oh, it's all about me and I'm angry and I'm sad or I'm happy. Why are you happy? Explore it. Put yourself away from it, because you'll learn so much about you, and it's beautiful because you then have the power to change that reaction or that feeling next time, because you then know that you felt like this.
And that goes back to self-awareness as well. Yeah,
because your mom shouted at you 10 years ago about something you didn't do, and then you're like, it's in you, it's engraved, and now you're doing the same thing to someone else. Ooh, that's a lot. So really explore why those feelings are arising.
I guess it's all about like kind of having a conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
Like I love doing that. I love. It's hard, difficult, but when you catch it, it's basically like catching a chicken. Like,
I share that conversation that you shared the other day.
Or on the first one, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I had an argument with my sister, or I had a disagreement, because I don't like having arguments. I just avoid it at all costs. And obviously, I just walked off, went to my room, like just started editing, started working, whatever. And the feeling I was feeling this emotion of anger, of feeling belittled, or whatever. Like I had these emotions in it. So I thought, let me have a conversation with myself. And the conversation literally went like this. Here, watch it. I said, "Cool. How are you feeling right now? Angry, upset, belittled, whatever. Cool. How long do you want to have this emotion?" Like 5 minutes, and I said I was done. 5 minutes was up 5 minutes ago. Why did you still have this emotion? I just put a smile on my face. I was happy, just like that. And I have it's almost like a superpower. I can just choose to be happy. And I always say this, and when I start talking about this, I sound crazy because it's such a foreign concept to so many people. But you can actually choose your emotions. Emotion is a choice, not a reaction or a subconscious thing, or it's just a choice. And like I said, you don't choose the situation, you choose your reaction to the situation. So how do you react to it? I immediately chose to react in a negative way, in an angry way to that argument. But once I took control of my emotion, I took control of myself, had that conversation with myself, I realized, you know what, I just want to be happy. And I was happy, just like that. Like literally, it wasn't like a gradual emotion change. It was just from here to there, instant, I'm happy now. It's just a choice.
Yeah, but it takes a lot to have that.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to, we're never taught to do this. Why? It goes back to the fact that not many people, when they are in those emotions, even think about them. They just feel them. And then they don't have the ability to then step away from them. So to learn to step away from them or to have that conversation, it takes a lot of practice.
I even said this on the pod that I was on. Is a subconscious. Is like the subconscious is the thing that takes over your subconscious takes over your reaction before you're ready to take over the reaction. And if you train your subconscious to choose to react in a certain way that you want to react to it, then when you take over, it does. Actually, no. Let me explain this properly because I feel like I just made it all up. So essentially, your subconscious is always ready to take over prior to you being consciously ready to take over. So like, let's say for example, I had an argument, I was angry. I didn't choose, I didn't consciously choose to be angry. I subconsciously chose to be angry because my subconscious is always ready to react. And then when my subconscious feels like I'm ready to take over consciously, I then take over. Sometimes we change, sometimes we stay. Like in the emotion. So if my subconscious chose to be angry, I need to train my subconscious to react in specific ways. So next time I do have an argument, I'll just be happy as a result of that argument, rather than having to be angry because of my subconscious, and then I consciously there you go, that one. Take over and then change the reaction, change the emotion. But I can't just have the same emotion and almost be like aligned with my subconscious. So there's not two different emotions or two different personalities kind of thing. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. You know what? It just made me think of something powerful. How can I use my consciousness to upload something good to my subconscious that I can use in the future?
And that's all self-awareness.
Yeah,
All of it.
goes
All
back
of
to
it.
that.
Question everything.
So yeah, we're coming towards the end. So what's the third thing? And then I've got a question for you.
So what did I say? I said self-awareness.
You said your values.
And then values, morals, beliefs.
Yeah.
And the question was what
like the three most important things you've learned so far in your life? So what would you say the third thing is?
I think it's very important to love yourself. I know it sounds very cliche, but that goes a bit deeper. So learn to really accept you for who you are. And if you're quirky, be bloody quirky. And if you're smart and intelligent, be smart and intelligent. Love that. I think often when we're younger, we can often try and fit into some things in life. And instead of trying to fit in, maybe spend that time with you to see what sets you apart instead, and then focus on that, because that's you, man. That's you at your core. That's you with your purpose. That's you. If you learn to focus on that, and you do spend that time in your earlier years, I guarantee you're going to have a better life and a more pleasant and enjoyable life, because you then don't have that need to fit into other standards. To kind of
please other people's opinions and stuff. Do you know what? It says something really interesting, and I think for me as well, I'm kind of on the same page. Like, rather than trying to fit in, I think sometimes the person might be in the wrong community. So like, because if you're trying to fit in, that means you're part of the wrong group of people in first place anyways, because if you can't be yourself around them, then you're not in the right group.
Very true.
And the right group is somewhere out there for you.
Very
I think there's all kinds of people out there, all kinds of communities. So I think that's what it is. And yeah, like, is there anything you want to promote by any chance?
Lots of love. No, well, I have my own sort of HDS Academy, where I do my health and wellbeing coaching. So if anyone is interested or is in a pickle with their health and wellbeing,
what's the Instagram for it, or like?
So at HDS Academy.
HDS Academy on Instagram.
That's the Instagram page, and I'm going to sort of go into courses later down the line. But my focus is more going to be on sort of chronic illnesses, probably, because that's my little story, and I feel passionate about it now. So anyone that struggles with pain or has an immune disorder or whatever, or anyone who really wants to have a healthy life going forward, which isn't determined by, let's say, the social standards, because everyone's health is different. If someone has someone's health can be making sure that they go out to play with their grandchild, and that's a lot, whereas someone else's might do to squat 100 kg.
It looks different for everyone.
It's different, and I think that's why it's very important to not try and ask those questions when it comes to health. And it goes back to don't try and fit in, because your health, my health isn't a six-pack, and it will never be. And I'm now proud of that. I'm happy with it. Whereas someone else's might be, and be proud of that too. But really trying to find out what your health is. So mine is to sleep throughout the night. Like, I love life when I can do that, and that's my health. But someone else's might be to run the marathon. So just really determining and defining what that health is what that coaching does.
And there's also something about separating like self-image and health, and I think they're two separate things, and sometimes
that's a whole topic.
Yeah, that's a whole topic, and I think sometimes people just cross that border over too many times, and they don't understand the difference.
Absolutely.
And sometimes getting the self-image can affect the health, so it's like, which one's more important,
Absolutely.
And cool, so the question that we ask every single guest that comes on is, if you were to say one thing to the whole world, what would you say?
Oh, that's good, isn't it? Trust. Just trust everything, but then trust with a sprinkle of knowing where you are and where you want to be. So trust with a sprinkle of self-awareness. Learn about yourself. That's another thing. Spend the time exploring you. I think that's the one. Spend the time exploring who you are and where, what you like, what you don't like, what you love, what you don't love. And if you don't know, find out, and then or just state it. That's what I want to like, and that's what I want to love, and that's what I don't agree with, and I won't. So really explore yourself and learn about you. I think is the most beautiful thing we can do on this journey, and it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing.
I love that. That's beautiful. And yeah, thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll do another one. Like, we're gonna start doing trios at some point. So I would like to invite you with probably another guest. We'll sort that out at some point.
Okay, that's a plan.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Nice being here.